The dust kicked up around her worn boots as Lily walked across the ranch yard, her heart hammering against her ribs like a wild Mustang trying to break free. 22 years old, and she had never felt this nervous about anything, not even when she'd first climbed onto the back of her father's most stubborn bull at age 16. But this was different. This was Jake. Jake Harrison stood by the corral fence, his weathered hands resting on the wooden rails as he watched the horses move in the late afternoon light. His black hat cast a shadow over his face, but she could see the strong line of his jaw, the way his shoulders filled out his worn denim shirt. He was 35, 13 years older than her, and everything about him spoke of experience and quiet strength. Her father's ranch stretched out as far as the eye could see, rolling hills covered in golden grass that swayed in the warm breeze. The Red River Ranch had been in her family for 3 generations, but times were hard. Cattle prices had dropped, and they'd had to let most of the hands go. But Jake was one of the few who stayed, working for less money because he believed in the land and what they were trying to build. "You heading out to check the south pasture?" she called out, trying to keep her voice steady. Jake turned, and those green eyes of his found hers immediately. There was something in his gaze that made her breath catch, something that had been building between them for months now. "Thought I might want to come along?" The invitation hung in the air between them like morning mist over the river. She knew this was more than just a ride to check on cattle. They both knew it. "I'd like that," she said, and her voice came out softer than she intended. He saddled up Lightning, his black stallion, while she prepared Buttercup, the golden mare she'd been riding since she was 12. The horses seemed to sense something different about this evening ride. Stepping more carefully, their ears pricked forward with attention. They rode in comfortable silence for the first mile. The only sounds, the creak of leather and the soft thud of hooves on packed earth. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that seemed to go on forever. "Beautiful evening," Jake said finally, his voice carrying easily across the space. Between their horses, "It is," she agreed, but she wasn't looking at the sunset. She was watching him, the easy way he sat in the saddle, how natural he looked against this landscape. He belonged here in a way that few people ever belonged anywhere. When they reached the south pasture, the cattle were grazing peacefully in the fading light. Jake dismounted and walked the fence line, checking for any weak spots or damage. She watched him work, admiring his attention to detail, the way he cared for this place, as if it were his own. "Your daddy's lucky to have you helping out," she said when he returned to where she waited by the horses. "I'm the lucky one," he replied, looking directly at her. "Not everyone gets to work somewhere that feels like home." There was something in the way he said it that made her think he meant more than just the ranch. Her pulse quickened as he stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne mixed with the honest scent of leather and fresh air. "Lily," he said, and her name sounded different in his voice, weighted with meaning she'd been hoping to hear for months. "Yes." He reached up and touched her face, his calloused fingers gentle against her cheek. "I've been wanting to tell you something." She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. When she opened them again, he was studying her face, like he was trying to memorize every detail. "I know you're young," he said carefully. "And I know your father trusts me to look out for you, not to complicate things." "I'm not that young," she whispered. "Young enough that you deserve better than a broken-down cowboy with more miles on him than an old pickup truck." She stepped closer, placing her hand on his chest where she could feel his heart beating as fast as hers. "What I deserve." The last light of day was fading around them, stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. In the distance, a coyote called out, wild and lonesome. Jake's hand slid from her face to rest on her shoulder. "I care about you, Lily. More than I should. More than you should, or more than you expected." He was quiet for a long moment, his green eyes searching hers. "Both, I reckon." She had dreamed about this moment, imagined it 100 different ways, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of standing here with him, feeling the electricity that seemed to crackle in the air between them. "Jake," she said, and took a breath that felt like the most important breath of her life. I need you to know something too. He waited, patient as always, giving her the space to find her words. You're my first, she said simply. Not just kiss, or anything like that. You're the first man I've ever felt this way about. The first one who makes me feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Something shifted in his expression, a tenderness that made her heart ache with how much she wanted this, wanted him. Lily, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Pulled her closer, and she could feel the warmth of his body, the solid strength of him. If we do this, if we take this step, there's no going back. I don't want to go back. He leaned down then, and she rose up on her toes to meet him. There. First kiss was soft, tentative, like they were both afraid of breaking something precious. But when she sighed against his lips, he deepened the kiss, and she felt like she was falling and flying at the same time. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers, both of them breathing hard. You'll always be my last. He whispered, and she knew he meant it, knew that whatever happened next, this moment had changed everything between them forever. The morning after their first kiss, Lily woke before dawn, with her heart still racing from dreams of green eyes and gentle hands. She pulled on her jeans and boots, moving quietly through the house so she wouldn't wake her father. The kitchen was dark, except for the soft glow of the clock on the stove, showing 5-30. She made coffee the way her mother used to, strong enough to wake the dead, her hands trembling slightly as she measured out the grounds. Everything felt different now. Like the whole world had shifted on its axis during that moment when Jake's lips touched hers. Through the kitchen window, she could see light already glowing in the bunkhouse windows. The ranch hands who remained were early risers, but she knew Jake would be up before all of them. Checking on the horses before the day officially began, her father appeared in the doorway, his graying hair sticking up at odd angles. At 58, Robert Mitchell still moved like a much younger man, though the lines around his eyes had deepened over the past few years as they'd struggled to keep the ranch afloat. You're up early, sweetheart, he said, accepting the cup of coffee she handed him. Couldn't sleep, she admitted. He studied her face with those sharp eyes that never missed much. Everything all right? Of course, Daddy. Just thinking about the day ahead. But she could see he wasn't entirely convinced. Her father had always been able to read her like an open book. She wondered if he could somehow sense the change in her. The way her entire world had tilted toward Jake Harrison. They worked together, preparing breakfast for the hands, a routine they'd fallen into after her mother passed 5 years ago. Scrambled eggs, bacon, biscuits with honey butter, and more coffee than should be legal. It was honest food for honest work, the kind of meal that would fuel a man through 12 hours under the Texas sun. The hands filed in as the sun painted the eastern sky pink and gold. Billy Chen, barely 19 and built like a scarecrow, but could rope a calf faster than anyone she'd ever seen. Old Pete Martinez, 63 and ornery as a wet cat, but knew more about cattle than most veterinarians. And Jake, who came in last, his hair still damp from washing up, their eyes met across the crowded kitchen, and she felt that same jolt of electricity from the night before. He gave her the smallest smile, just a barely there curve of his lips. But it made her feel like she was glowing from the inside out. Morning, Lily, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Morning, she managed, hoping nobody else could hear how breathless she sounded. Her father looked between them. She held her breath, certain he would see what had changed between them. But he just nodded to Jake and started discussing the day's work. We need to move the cattle from the north pasture down closer to the river, he said. Ground's getting to dry up there, and they need better access to water. I'll take Billy and Pete up there after breakfast, Jake offered. Should be able to get them moved by noon if we start early enough. What about me? Lily asked. I can help. Her father shook his head. Got other plans for you, darlin'. Mrs. Patterson called yesterday. Wants to talk about boarding some of her horses here while her place gets the new barn built. Could be good money if we can make it work. Disappointment settled in her stomach like a stone. She wanted to be out there with Jake, working beside him, finding moments to steal glances and maybe brush hands when nobody was looking. Instead, she'd be stuck in town talking business with their neighbor. I could handle Mrs. Patterson, Jake. said quietly. Lily knows more about the horses than any of us. Her father raised an eyebrow. Since when do you volunteer to sit in parlors drinking tea and making small talk? Heat crept up Jake's neck, and Lily had to bite her lip to keep from smiling. He was trying to help her, even if it meant doing something he clearly dreaded. Just thought it might be better, Jake muttered.
Oh, yeah.
No, you were right the first time. Lily's got the education for dealing with business folk. Besides, it'll do her good to get off the ranch for a few hours. After breakfast, as the men prepared to head out, Jake lingered in the kitchen while Lily washed dishes. Her father had already gone to warm up the truck, leaving them alone for the first time since their kiss. I wanted to ride with you today, she said softly, not looking at him. No, me too. He moved closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. But maybe it's better this way. Give us both time to think about things. She turned to face him, her hands still dripping soapy water. Don't need time to think. I know how I feel. Lily. He reached out like he was going to touch her face, then stopped himself, his hand dropping to his side. This thing between us, it's going to complicate everything. Your father, the ranch, my job here. Only if we let it. You don't understand. If Robert finds out I've been inappropriate with his daughter, he'll run me off this place faster than lightning, and he'd have every right to do it. She dried her hands on the dish towel, never breaking eye contact with him, and we'll just have to make sure he doesn't find out, at least not until we figure out what this is. Jake was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. You're sure? About this? About keeping it between us for now? I'm sure about you, she said. Everything else we can figure out as we go. He smiled then, a real smile that made those lines around his eyes crease in the most wonderful way. All right then, but we go slow, you understand? I won't have you rushing into something just because it feels exciting, not rushing into anything. I've been thinking about this for months. Months. He looked surprised. Since that day you helped me with Buttercup when she got spooked by that rattler. The way you were so gentle with her, so patient. That's when I knew you were different. From other men, her father's truck horn honked outside, impatient and demanding. I have to go, she said, but made no move toward the door. Lily. This time he did reach out, his fingers brushing against her hand for just a moment. Be careful driving to town. And don't let old lady Patterson talk you into a bad deal just because she's charming. I won't. She wanted to kiss him goodbye. Wanted to feel his arms around her again, but knew they couldn't risk it. Not with her father waiting outside and the other hands nearby instead. She squeezed his fingers briefly and walked away, feeling his eyes on her until she disappeared around the corner. The drive to town gave her time to think about what they were starting, the delicious secrecy of it. She'd never had a secret romance before, never felt the thrill of hidden glances and stolen moments. It felt grown-up and dangerous and absolutely perfect. But underneath the excitement was something else. Something that made her press a little harder on the gas pedal. She couldn't shake the feeling that keeping their feelings hidden was going to be harder than either of them imagined. 3 weeks passed like a sweet kind of torture. Lily discovered that having a secret romance was both the most wonderful and most frustrating thing she'd ever experienced. Every morning brought the anticipation of seeing Jake across the breakfast table. Every evening, the hope of finding a moment alone together. They'd managed to steal exactly 4 more kisses in those 3 weeks. Once behind the hay barn, when everyone else was at lunch. Once in the tack room, while her father was on the phone with the feed supplier. Once by the creek when they'd ridden out to check fence posts. And once, memorably, in the kitchen at midnight, when she'd come down for a glass of water and found him sitting at the table, unable to sleep. Each kiss was a revelation, different. From the last but equally devastating to her peace of mind, she was learning the taste of him, the way his hands felt in her hair. The soft sound he made when she pressed closer against him, but it was the almost kisses that were driving her crazy. The moments when they'd be working together, close enough to touch, and she'd catch him looking at her mouth. The times when he'd reach around her to grab something and she'd feel his breath against her neck. The careful way he'd help her down from her horse, his hands lingering just a moment too long at her waist. Her father seemed oblivious, which was both a blessing and somehow disappointing. Part of her wanted him to notice, to see how happy she was, even if it meant complications. The horse boarding arrangement with Mrs. Patterson had worked out better than expected. They now had 6 additional horses on the property, bringing in enough extra money to cover the monthly feed bill with some left over. It was a small victory, but victories had been rare enough lately that they celebrated it. We should think about expanding the horse operation, Lily suggested one evening as they sat on the porch after dinner. Her father was reading the local paper while she pretended to work on mending a bridle. Really, she was watching Jake work with one of the new horses in the corral, admiring the easy confidence with which he moved. "It's not a bad idea," her father said, without looking up from the paper. "Jake's got a real way with horses. Might be worth exploring." "He does," she agreed, trying to keep her voice casual. "He's good at a lot of things." This time her father did look up, studying her face with those sharp eyes. "You spending a lot of time thinking about what Jake's good at?" Her heart jumped, but she forced herself to meet his gaze steadily. "I notice things about all the hands. It's important to know everyone's strengths." Memham, he folded the paper and set it aside. "Walk with me, sweetheart." Oh. It wasn't really a request, and Lily's stomach clenched with nervous anticipation as she followed him down the porch steps and across the yard. They walked in silence until they reached the old oak tree where her mother used to hang the laundry. Far enough from the house and bunkhouse that their voices wouldn't carry. "You want to tell me what's going on between you and Jake?" he asked. "Quietly, nothing's going on, Daddy. We work together, same as always." He was quiet for a long moment, looking out across the pasture where the horses grazed in the fading light. "Your mother was about your age when I met her. I was working for her father, just like Jake works for me." Lily's breath caught. This wasn't what she'd expected. Her daddy didn't approve of me. Thought she could do better than a cowboy with nothing. But the clothes on his back and a beat-up truck, he smiled at the memory. It took me 3 years to convince him I was worthy of her. Another 2 to save up enough money to feel like I could support a wife. "Daddy, I don't know why you're telling me this, 'cause I see the way you look at him, and I see the way he looks at you when he thinks nobody's watching. And I see the way both of you have been walking around here for weeks like you're carrying some kind of secret that's about to burst out of you." She wanted to deny it, but found herself unable to lie to him anymore. "Are you angry?" "Angry?" "No, darling. Concerned, yes. Jake's a good man, one of the best I've ever known. But he's also 13 years older than you, and you're my only child. Age doesn't matter when you care about someone. It does when you're 22 and haven't experienced much of the world yet. It does when the man you think you're in love with has been places and done things that might have left scars you can't. See? You think I'm too young to know my own heart?" He sighed, reaching out to touch her cheek the same way Jake had that first night. "I think you're young enough that your heart might change, and old enough to get it broken badly if you're not careful." Stood in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the evening sounds of the ranch settling in for the night. A horse nickered somewhere in the distance, and an owl called from the old barn. "I'm not going to forbid anything," her father said finally. "You're a grown woman, and Jake's a man of honor. But I want you both to be sure about what you're doing." "Real sure?" "We're being careful, Daddy." "Taking things slow, are you?" He looked at her with raised eyebrows. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're both about ready to combust from all the careful you've been doing." Heat flooded her cheeks, and she ducked her head. "Talk to him," her father said gently. "Really talk about what you both want, what you're hoping for. And remember that secrets have a way of getting heavier the longer you carry them." He kissed the top of her head and walked back toward the house, leaving her standing under the oak tree with her heart pounding and her mind racing. She found Jake in the barn.
Oh.
Checking on Lightning's left front hoof that had been bothering, though. Hoarse earlier in the day, he looked up when she appeared in the doorway and she saw the question in his eyes. "We need to talk," she said. He straightened slowly, reading something in her expression. "Your father knows. He knows. He's not angry, but he's concerned, and he wants us to be sure about what we're doing." Jake was quiet for a long moment, his hands still gentle on Lightning's leg. "Maybe he's right to be concerned." "Don't you dare," she said, stepping closer. Don't you dare use this as an excuse to pull away from me. I'm not pulling away. But maybe we should think about whether we're being fair to each other, keeping this secret, sneaking around like teenagers. Then let's stop sneaking around. He looked up at her then, surprise clear in his green eyes. You want to tell everyone? Make this official? Want to stop pretending I don't care about you? I want to stop acting like there's nothing between us when every single person on this ranch probably already knows anyway. Jake stood and walked to where she waited by the barn door. In the soft light filtering through the dusty windows, he looked younger somehow, less certain than she'd ever seen him. If we do this, if we make it real in public, there's no taking it back. Your father will expect me to have honorable intentions. Don't you, Lily? He reached for her hands, holding them carefully in his calloused ones. My intentions toward you are so honorable it's been keeping me awake at night. That's what scares me. She felt something settle in her chest, a warm certainty that made everything else fade into background noise. Then let's stop being scared, she whispered, and rose up on her toes to kiss him, right there in the doorway where anyone could see them. The morning after their decision to stop hiding, Lily woke with butterflies dancing in her stomach and sunshine streaming through her bedroom window. Today would be different. Today she didn't have to pretend that Jake Harrison was just another ranch hand to her. She dressed carefully, choosing her favorite blue blouse that brought out her eyes, braided her hair in a way that looked effortless, but had actually taken 3 tries to get right. When she walked into the kitchen, her father was already there, and he gave her a knowing smile over his coffee cup. Sleep well, darling. Better than I have in weeks, she admitted, and it was true. The relief of not carrying their secret anymore. It felt like setting down a heavy load she hadn't realized was wearing her out. The hands filed in for breakfast, as usual. But when Jake appeared in the doorway, instead of avoiding his eyes or giving him just a quick nod, Lily smiled at him openly. Really smiled, the kind that started in her heart and spread across her face like sunrise. Morning, Jake, she said, and her voice was warm with affection she no longer had to hide. Morning, beautiful, he replied, and the endearment hung in. The air like a bell that had been rung, clear and unmistakable. Billy Chen nearly choked on his coffee. Old Pete looked back and forth between them with raised eyebrows. Her father just buttered his biscuit like nothing unusual had happened. Well, I'll be, Pete muttered. About damn time. Right. You two been dancing around each other like nervous colts. For weeks, Billy added with a grin. It was starting to get painful to watch. Jake pulled out the chair next to Lily instead of his usual spot across the table. When he sat down, their knees brushed, and neither of them moved away. So this is happening, her father said. Not really a question. Yes, sir, Jake replied, his voice steady and respectful. With your permission, I'd like to court your daughter properly. Lily's heart did a little flip at the old-fashioned word. Courting. It sounded serious and romantic and exactly right. You planning to do right by her? I plan to do everything I can to make her happy, sir. She deserves the best of everything, and I know I'm not that, but I'll spend every day trying. To be worthy of her? Her father nodded slowly. Then you have my permission. But Jake, if you hurt her, I'll run you off this ranch so fast you'll think you got hit by lightning. Understood, sir. Daddy, Lily protested, embarrassed. What? A father's got responsibilities. Making sure his daughter's beau knows the consequences is one of them. The word beau made her blush, but Jake reached over and took her hand right there at the breakfast table, in front of everyone, and suddenly she didn't care about blushing. I won't hurt her, Jake said quietly, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. I'd sooner cut off my own arm. The sincerity in his voice made her chest tight with emotion. She squeezed his hand and saw something soft and wondering cross his face. Like he couldn't quite believe this was real either. After breakfast, as they prepared for the day's work, everything felt different. Jake didn't have to find excuses to be near her. When she was saddling Buttercup, he came over and checked her cinch strap, his hands brushing hers as he tightened it. You don't have to do that, she said. I've been saddling horses since I was 8. I know, just like taking care of you. The simple statement made her heart race. She turned to face him, and he was close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his green eyes. We're really doing this, she said softly. We're really doing this. leaned down and kissed her forehead, gentle and sweet. "How do you feel about that?" "Like I might float right up to the clouds if you don't keep holding on to me." He laughed, and the sound was rich and warm, and made her want to hear it every day for the rest of her life. They rode out together to check the south pasture. And for the first time in weeks, Lily could simply enjoy being with him without the constant worry of being caught. They talked easily as they rode, about the ranch, about the horses, about dreams and plans for the future. "I've been thinking about what your father said about expanding the horse operation," Jake said, as they stopped to let their horses drink from the creek. "Oh, I've got some money saved up. Not much, but enough to maybe build a proper training facility, if your father would be interested in a partnership." She looked at him with surprise. "You'd want to invest in the ranch?" "I'd want to invest in our future," he said simply. "This place that feels like home to me. You feel like home to me." The words hit her like a physical force, knocking the breath out of her lungs. "Jake, I know it's early to be talking like this. I know we've got a lot to figure out still. But Lily, I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. Never thought I'd want to put down roots somewhere, build something permanent." She dismounted and walked to where he still sat on Lightning, looking up at him with tears in her eyes. "What are you saying?" He swung down from his horse and took her hands in his. "I'm saying I love you. I'm saying I want to build a life with you, here on this land, if you'll have me. You love me. I love you so much it scares the hell out of me sometimes. Love the way you care for the animals, the way you stand up to your father when you think he's being overprotective. Love how you look in the morning before you've had your coffee, all sleepy and soft. Love your laugh, your stubbornness, the way you make me want to be a better man." She was crying now, happy tears that she didn't bother to wipe away. "I love you too. I think I've loved you since that first day you smiled at me over the breakfast table." When he kissed her this time, it was different from all the stolen kisses they'd shared. This kiss was a promise, a claim, declaration that they belonged to each other now. When they finally broke apart, she rested her head against his chest and listened to the steady beat of his heart. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now we take it one day at a time, work together, build something together. See where this love takes us." She pulled back to look at him, studying his face in the afternoon light. "I want to show you something." She led him up the hill behind the creek to a spot she'd discovered as a child. A flat piece of land that overlooked the entire ranch. From here, you could see the house, the barns, the pastures, stretching out toward the horizon. "I used to come here when I was little and imagine what the ranch would look like in the future. I always pictured adding buildings, more horses, maybe a house right over there where those oak trees are." Jake looked where she was pointing, and she could see him envisioning it too. "That would be a good spot for a house," he said thoughtfully. "Close enough to the main operations, but private too. I was thinking it would be perfect for a family. Kids could play in those trees, learn to ride in the pasture right below." He went very still beside her. "Kids," she blushed, but met his eyes steadily. "Someday, when we're ready, that's something you'd want." Jake was quiet for so long she started to worry she'd said too much, moved too fast. But then he smiled, slow and wondering. "I never thought about having kids before. But with you, I find myself thinking about all kinds of things I never thought I wanted." The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. As they stood there looking out over the land they both loved, Lily felt like she was exactly where she belonged, with exactly the right person, at exactly the right moment in time. 2 months into their official courtship, trouble arrived at the Red River Ranch in the form of a certified letter that made her father's face go pale when he read it. Lily was in the barn, grooming one of Mrs. Patterson's horses when her father appeared in the doorway, the letter clutched in his hand, and a look on his face she hadn't seen since her mother's funeral. "Oh, Daddy, what's wrong?" He held out the letter without a word. She took it with trembling fingers and read the legal language that might as well have been written in a foreign tongue, except for the parts that were crystal clear. Foreclosure, 90 days to pay, amount due that made her stomach drop to her. "Boots, I don't understand," she said, even though she did understand, had been afraid of this for months. "Bank's calling in the loan, says we've missed too many payments," which is true enough. Her father's voice was flat, emotionless in the way it got when he was trying not to fall apart. Drought last summer killed our hay crop, and cattle prices have been in the toilet for 2 years running. But we've been making the horse boarding work. Mrs. Patterson's been telling all her friends about us. It's not enough, sweetheart. Not nearly enough. Jake appeared behind her father, drawn by the sound of their voices. He took one look at their faces and stepped into the barn. What's happened? Lily handed him the letter, watching his expression grow grim as he read. When he finished, he folded it carefully and gave it back to her father. How much time do we have? 90 days to come up with $47,000, her father said with a bitter laugh. Might as well be 47 million. There has to be something we can do, Lily said. We could sell more cattle, take out another loan somewhere else. With what collateral? The ranch is already mortgaged to the hilt, and our cattle aren't worth half what we owe on them. Jake was quiet, staring out across the pasture where the horses grazed peacefully in the afternoon sun. What about selling part of the land? About that? Problem is, nobody wants to buy a piece of a ranch. They want the whole thing, house and all. And anyone with that kind of money isn't looking to help us keep farming. They want to develop it, turn it into one of those fancy subdivisions. The thought of bulldozers tearing up the pastures where she'd learned to ride, of houses crowding out the cattle and horses, made Lily feel sick. We'll find a way, she said fiercely. This ranch has been in our family for 3 generations. We're not losing it now. Her father smiled sadly and touched her face. Your mother used to say that same thing when times got tough. We'll find a way, Robert. We'll always find a way. She was right then, and I'm right now. But even as she said it, Lily felt panic creeping up her throat. $47,000 in 90 days. It seemed impossible. That evening, she sat on the porch swing her father had built for her mother, staring out at the land she'd grown up on and trying to imagine it belonging to someone else. Jake found her there as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that seemed to mock the darkness settling over their future. Mind if I sit? He asked softly. She scooted over to make room for him, and he settled beside her, the swing creaking gently under their combined weight. For a while, they just sat in comfortable silence, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting against his chest. I've been thinking, he said finally. About what? About solutions. About what we can do. She lifted her head to look at him. Jake, if you're thinking about giving us your savings, forget it. I won't let you throw away everything you've worked for. It's not throwing it away if it saves the ranch. It's not enough anyway. But you said yourself you don't have much saved up. I've got about 15,000. It's not everything we need, but it's a start. The casual way he said it, like $15,000 was nothing like he'd give it. Up without a second thought for her family's ranch, made her eyes fill with tears. I can't let you do that. Why not? This place is going to be my home too, if you'll have me. These aren't just your dreams we're fighting for. She turned in his arms to face him fully. What are you saying? Jake was quiet for a moment, his green eyes serious in the fading light. I'm saying I want to marry you, Lily Mitchell. Want to make this ranch our ranch. Build that house up on the hill. Fill it with children who'll grow up running through these pastures. Her heart stopped, then started again at double speed. Are you proposing to me? I'm saying I love you more than I ever thought it was possible to love someone. I'm saying I want to spend the rest of my life working beside you, building something. Together, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I'm saying, yes, I'm proposing to you. The ring was simple and beautiful, a solitaire diamond on a thin gold band that caught the last rays of sunlight and threw them back in tiny rainbows. Jake, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of her heart pounding. I know. The timing isn't ideal, with all this trouble hanging over us. But maybe that's exactly why the timing is perfect. Maybe we need to fight for our future together. She looked at the ring, then at his face, seeing hope and love and determination in his eyes. You really want to marry me? I want to marry you. More than I want my next breath. Even though I come with a failing ranch and more debt than you can shake a stick at. Especially because of that. I don't want just the easy parts of your life, Lily. I want all of it. Struggles and the victories, the bad years and the good ones. She threw her arms around his neck, kissing him with all the love and fear and hope that was bursting out of her heart. When they finally broke apart, she was crying and laughing at the same time. "Is that a yes?" he asked, grinning. "That's a yes to everything?" "Yes, I'll marry you." "Yes, I want to build a life together." "Yes, I want to fight for this place together." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, like it had been made just for her. Which, she realized, it had been. "Long have you been planning this?" she asked. "Since that first night when you told me I was your first." "I knew right." "Then that I wanted to be your last everything. Your last first kiss. Your last first dance. Your last first everything." They sat together on the swing until full dark, making plans and dreaming dreams. The weight of the foreclosure notice temporarily forgotten in the joy of their engagement. But reality crept back in when her father appeared on the porch, and they had to tell him their news in the shadow of potentially losing everything they all cared about. "Well," he said after Jake had formally asked for his blessing and shown him the ring on Lily's finger, "I can't say I'm surprised. Been watching you two fall deeper in love every day. We want to fight for the ranch together, Daddy, as a family." Her father nodded slowly. "I appreciate that. I do. But I won't have you to starting your marriage buried under a mountain of debt that isn't yours to carry. It'll be mine to carry," Jake said firmly. "When I marry Lily, her family becomes my family, her home becomes my home. Her troubles become my troubles. That's a lot to take on, son. It's what you do for the people you love." Her father studied them both for a long moment, then smiled for the first time since the letter had arrived. "Your mother would have loved you," he said to Jake. "I always said the ranch needed someone with enough grit to fight for it, and enough heart to love it. Looks like Lily found exactly that." They sat together on the porch. Three people who loved each other and loved the land they were sitting on. Lily felt something she hadn't felt since reading that foreclosure notice. Hope. They had 90 days to save the ranch, and now they had each other to do it with.
How?
Somehow, that made even the impossible seem manageable. 9 days. That's how much time they had left when the miracle happened. Lily was mucking out stalls in the early morning light, her engagement ring catching the sun as she worked, when she heard the sound of vehicles coming up the long driveway. Not just one vehicle, but several, kicking up dust clouds that announced important visitors. She dropped her pitchfork and ran to the barn door, her heart sinking as she saw 3 black SUVs and a white pickup truck pulling into the yard. Men in expensive suits were climbing out of the SUVs, while a woman in crisp jeans and boots emerged from the pickup. Her father and Jake appeared from different directions, drawn by the sound of the engines. All 3 of them stood watching as the group approached, and Lily grabbed Jake's hand, needing his strength for whatever bad news these people had brought. "Mr. Mitchell?" The woman from the pickup stepped forward, extending her hand. "I'm Jennifer Walsh from Walsh Development Group. These gentlemen are from the bank. If you're here to start foreclosure proceedings early, you're wasting your time," her father said stiffly. "We still have over 2 months left. Actually, we're here with a proposition." Jennifer smiled, and it was a genuine smile, not the predatory grin Lily had expected from a developer. "We'd like to buy your ranch, Mr. Mitchell, all of it, for fair market value." "Fair market value for what?" Jake asked suspiciously. "So you can bulldoze it and build houses?" "Actually, no. We want to preserve it exactly as it is." The silence that followed was so complete that Lily could hear a meadowlark calling from the far pasture. "I don't understand," her father said slowly. "My client is a businessman from Dallas who grew up on a ranch not unlike this one. He's been looking for the right property to establish a working ranch preserve, somewhere that could demonstrate traditional ranching methods while also serving as a retreat for executives who want to experience authentic ranch life." "Dude." "Ranch," Lily said flatly. "Not exactly. More like a working ranch that occasionally hosts visitors. The cattle operation would continue, the horses would stay, and the land would remain agricultural. In fact, we'd probably need to hire more hands, not fewer." One of the suited men stepped forward. "We're prepared to offer $400,000 for the property, all buildings and livestock." The sale would clear your debt to the bank and leave you with a substantial profit. Lily felt the world tilt around her. $400,000. It was more money than she'd ever imagined having, enough to start over anywhere they wanted. And if we don't want to sell? Her father asked. Then in 89 days, the bank forecloses and you lose everything, the banker said matter-of-factly. We'll still buy it, but you'll get nothing. We'd like to offer you something else, Jennifer added. My client would like to hire you as a ranch manager, Mr. Mitchell. Full salary, benefits, and you could continue living in the main house. Same offer goes for any of your current hands who want to stay on. Jake's hand tightened on Lily's. What? About family? Mr. Mitchell has a daughter who's been helping run the place. We'd love to have her stay too, in whatever capacity works best. We understand this ranch runs on family knowledge and experience. Her father looked stunned. You're offering to let us keep living here and working the ranch, just not owning it? Exactly. You'd have all the benefits of ranching life without the financial stress. My client believes the best way to preserve a place like this is to keep the people who love it most. That evening, after the visitors had left and they'd had time to process the offer, the three of them sat on the front porch as the sun set over land that might not be theirs much longer. It's a good offer, her father said quietly. More than fair? But, Lily prompted because she could hear the hesitation in his voice. But this land has been in our family for 3 generations. Feels like giving up. Daddy, sometimes holding on too tight means you lose everything. This way we get to stay. We get to keep working the land we love. We just don't have to worry about losing it anymore. Jake shifted beside her on the swing. What would this mean for us, for our plans? We'd still build that house up on the hill, she said, surprising herself with how certain she sounded. We'd still get married, still work together every day. We'd just do it without the constant fear of bankruptcy hanging over our heads. And our children would still grow up here learning to ride and rope and take care of the land, Jake added thoughtfully. They just wouldn't inherit the debt along with the legacy, her father said with a rueful smile. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Lily spoke the words that had been forming in her heart. I think we should take it. Both men looked at her in surprise. This ranch will always be special to our family, whether we own the deed or not. The important thing is that it continues, that the land stays protected, that the cattle and horses have a good life here, and we get to be part of that. You're sure? Her father asked. No regrets about not passing ownership down to your children someday? I'm sure. The ranch shaped me into who I am, and it'll do the same for my kids. That's the real inheritance, not a piece of paper. Jake brought her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. If you're comfortable with it, then I am too. Father nodded slowly. Then I guess we're about to become employees of our own ranch. 3 weeks later, on a perfect October morning with the leaves turning gold on the oak trees, Lily married Jake Harrison in the meadow above the creek. Her dress was simple ivory silk. Her bouquet was wildflowers from the pasture. And her shoes were her best pair of boots because that's what felt right. The ceremony was small. Just family and the remaining ranch hands, but it felt perfect. When Jake promised to love her for all the days of his life, she believed him completely. When she promised the same, she meant every word. They honeymooned in the little cabin by the lake on the north section of the property, 3 days of just the two of them and no responsibilities except loving each other. When they returned, it was to start their new life as husband and wife, as partners in every sense of the word. The sale had gone through, the debt was cleared, and they had enough money in the bank to build their dream house and never worry about foreclosure again. 6 months later, as they broke ground for the house on the hill, Lily stood watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors and felt Jake's arms come around her from behind. Any regrets? He asked, his voice warm against her ear. She leaned back against his chest, her hands covering his where they rested on her still flat belly. That held the secret they'd share with her father at dinner tonight. About selling the ranch? No. About marrying you? Never. About the baby? She felt him go still behind her. Only that we'll have to wait 6 more months to meet him. He spun her around in his arms, his face lit up with joy and wonder. A baby. Baby, are you happy? Happy doesn't begin to cover it. He kissed her soundly, then dropped to his knees and pressed his face to her stomach. "Hello in there, little one. I'm your daddy, and I already love you more than all the stars in Texas." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Lily looked out over the ranch that would always be home, held in the arms of the man who would always be her last everything, carrying their first child who would grow up running through these same pastures she had. She'd been wrong that first night when she told Jake he was her first. He hadn't just been her first love. He'd been her first glimpse of forever, her first taste of the kind of happiness that lasts a lifetime, and true too. His whispered promise under the stars all those months ago, he would indeed always be her last.